here's the problem. I'm going to publish this. I want you to click again and see if you now see us. And if you do, the problem is anybody that came in early and did this now doesn't
Yes.
they will appear, and they're not going to know to go back and try to do that.
Okay.
So I'm not how we're going to do that.
We just carry on.
There you go.
Make sure.
All right, we're successful in watching via YouTube as well, guys.
Now you're live.
Hey!
So it works.
Hi, Jamie.
All right.
Jamie.
If I can interrupt for a second, here's what we need to do. Anybody that joined us before has the wrong link and is sitting there waiting for us to start.
I'll call
So I'm
him.
going to have Tom send an email immediately to everybody, and we'll try to help the people, letting them know that the new link up on Weebly.
That's good.
Okay, so I guess we're going to start. I guess we'll give Tom a second to email this because he's going to start today's session, and then we'll kind of pick up from there. So you want to turn that off now that you know first.
Doing what?
Close that YouTube so we don't hear us talking back. So anybody could join now. So Tom's going to send a quick email, and then we'll get started. I'll go to the Pear Deck. The problem is I could change the Pear Deck and add something, but that would change the code. They would all be kicked out too. So we're just going to have to go with this. And I'll write in there. I think I have an idea. We got 10 people in there, so I'll just start the Pear Deck. And I'll leave this up for a second. Trying to think if there's any way I can push them without kicking them out of this Pear Deck, so I can push them the new link. Anybody that's at home, because they won't know.
Could you ask it in the, like, just put it in a question, like, you link or an
I
act?
could, but I would see the thing is I'd have to go edit the Pear Deck. So
Oh, okay.
Out, so
This session 6 today?
Yeah.
Oh, should I do that? Is that your
Just up for a second.
Oh, wait, no. Well, I can hear from there. Just have to turn off this volume, so don't get
At this point, do you want to go and see if
Oh, no.
we
I'm sorry,
need
only
any
if
help
you
with
want.
getting ready for the...
We'll have to minimize this, because we're going to still get started.
All right.
Yeah, no, you don't have
Can you comment on the old YouTube?
Here, that may be everybody too.
to. Just,
So,
cool. So actually, what is it, penultimate, that's Weebly.
Okay. That's done.
all right, just for those of you in Cleveland, while we're waiting real quick, since I'm screen sharing, this is the live version being fed out, so everybody can kind of see how that looks. So this is us being broadcast live on the web at the loads. So those of you looking can see that it actually does work if you're at home once it loads. And it may never load. It loaded for you, right, Tom? You tell them it works.
It does work.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Tom's going to actually talk a little bit about the first couple of slides in the Pear Deck. I'm going to go ahead and close that because we've kind of already lost some time. So this should be kind of pushed to you, but I'm going to let Tom go ahead and talk a little bit about these as we progress forward.
Okay, you guys, so I had the great good fortune of spending time in Cleveland. I can't wait to visit Euclid and hang out with Casey and her folks. And now I'm back in Akron with Garth, and we figured based on the inclement weather that we would give people the option of joining from wherever they are, which is kind of important to us. So if you think of this as being a test of many, many different interconnected ideas, one of the cool things that we're doing right now, just based on what's happening with the thermometer outside, is we're attempting to go ahead and serve up the class in a different way. So thank you for your patience as we're kind of trying something different. So this class is being conducted with remote connection for all. Garth, are we recording this?
Yes. Since it's on air, it's recorded.
Okay. So, and then we're testing this as a form of instruction. So at the conclusion of today's class, we're going to ask you to complete an exit slip and a comment about how you feel about this. Does this seem to work? And do you like it? Or is this kind of in-person, kind of, there's somebody in your classroom with you that's working with you? Do you kind of like that more? I want to talk a little bit about the kind of assignments that have been pending up to this point. So last time in our session with Dr. Broadway, we kind of talked a lot and we read a lot and we wrote a lot, and it didn't really afford us a chance to really dive into this idea of your inquiry statement and the related photo visualization of that. So we're going to revisit that through the course of today's conversation. Garth's going to talk a little bit about it. We'll have maybe a little bit of a discussion here about it and post that out to you guys so you can kind of listen to us talking about it. But if you have not put something up on your wiki page with respect to your inquiry statement and that photo, we're looking to get that in place by the time we arrive at next Tuesday's class. Tuesday's class, and in fact Tuesday and Thursday's class, will hinge on your inquiry statement and that photo. Today what we're going to do is we're going to begin kind of a new segment of the class. We've talked about theory. We've talked about how that theory kind of is transacted or can be in a classroom. And we've talked about a way that we can kind of assign work to students using place-based problems. You go ahead and get them to develop an idea rather than many. Today we're going to start into one of the three forms of writing that are required according to the Ohio Department of Education. So we're going to be talking about informational writing. Now I'm excited about this because the more we move through this class, the more we kind of are feeling as though, and I think it's a great feeling to have, wait a minute, we got this kind of asset in librarians, libraries, and the intellectual capital that exists with this whole team of people who are a big part of this pilot, a big part of this test. And what we want to do is kind of tap that resource. We want to engage the librarians as we begin to develop ideas that can help us pursue our inquiry. And kind of a great place to start with that is to think in terms of informational writing. And according to the Ohio Department of Education, when we're teaching informational writing in a classroom, when we're instructing in that form of writing, an enormous part of it becomes, okay, well, can you go find evidence in support of an idea that you have, or to help flesh out that idea? So in this form of writing, the componentry that exists within a library system becomes extremely important to us. And that's why we've elected to kind of begin with informational writing as being something that we can walk through and talk about. We want to go on to the next one, Garth. So I wanted to give you guys a sense in thinking about this class and the two that follow, sessions 6, 7, and 8. Well, what are we really driving towards? If I'm a student and I'm coming to this class, if I'm engaged as a participant in the class, what are you really asking of me? And we wanted to kind of clarify that at the front end to help you shape expectations and shape your thinking about how you kind of interact with today's class. I wanted to just touch on these real briefly of kind of the 5 things that are going to happen over the course of the next 3 classes. In other words, what is a Sarah Dreisler in Akron, or what is a Jamie Cole in Parma, or a Casey Armstrong in Euclid? What are you on the hook for? What is it that we're asking you specifically to do? So if we just walk through these real quick, number 1, what we're going to be doing over these 3 upcoming course sessions is research your topic next week and locate 3 citations, posting that information, including links to those citations, in support of your informational writing that you will be doing to your wiki page. Okay? The second thing we're going to do is we're going to assist at least 2 people in a classroom. Now, when I say classroom, that could be Jamie working with Sarah here. It could be anybody because we've got that kind of wiki page domain between us. We're inviting you and expecting you, in fact, to explore what different people are doing with their projects. And we ask that you assist by virtue of responding on the wiki page, typing in, it's almost like a blog site, so you just see what somebody's doing and then you type a response to them, that we see kind of course mates getting additional ideas or perspectives kind of thrown at them. And that you help engage that, because you know, if you're a librarian, you may see things very differently than a teacher does, and vice versa. So we ask that you go ahead and interact on the wikis by commenting on the work of others. Third thing we're going to be doing over the next, inclusive of the next 3 sessions, is to build something we're going to call a thing link, and Garth will talk to you about that today. That's really going to bring the photo that you're choosing to life. I don't want you to be worried if you don't have your photo in place. Don't worry about it. We'll be okay. But we're going to be looking at a way that we can take a photo, ordinary photo, and very simply make it an interactive tool to help you express informational writing. Fourth thing is generate an informational writing response. We're going to actually cordon that off. We're going to give you 40 minutes to write it, just like we'd be in a regular English language arts class. And you're going to go ahead and write. So what we're doing now and in the next couple of course sessions is trying to gather ideas, gather information that we can use so that when you come, you're ready to write on that. And then, again, with number 5, what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to comment on other people's work. Okay? So that's kind of, this is what we're doing, and not just doing now. This is what we're working in doing over the next couple of class sessions. Now today is going to be instructor-led a little bit to get us into it. Garth's going to help us with that. But I want you to be thinking about, when we come to class on Tuesday of next week, this is a lot that's turned over to you. This is us being there to help and aid and answer questions and so forth and interact with you in any way that's good for you, but it's going to be up to you to kind of take the lead in working through this task list. Does that make sense? And are there any questions? Sarah? Sarah's good here. I know we have people remotely. If there are questions, I want you to always feel free to call me or email me. You've got my number in your directory. Garth and Dr. Broadway, too, are very kind of, up to speed with what's going on with this. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us. We will help you work through it.
I do know there's 4 people watching this remotely. You can see the number on the YouTube, so I don't know if they have questions. That they do, you probably have to send an email. As Tom was just talking, obviously you can't respond directly to us right now. Anything from Cleveland or Euclid that they want to ask any questions about what Tom said before we begin?
Anything? I think we're good at Cuyahoga.
Okay. I'm going to reiterate a little bit too on this. Number 4, which is to generate the informational writing response. The way that's kind of looking is that's going to be the class 8, which kind of opens up class 7 for you to be doing research, to actually be reading, because you actually need information to write about. So the whole concept of next Tuesday is to take that question that you've come up with, which we're going to start with in just a second, and begin to look for resources that will help you learn information, the factual information you need to write a informational response about the paper. So next week, basically, if you want to think about it this way, research a little bit today and Thursday with reading information, and then on Thursday you would be using the wiki to write a timed response about your essential question you're starting with. Correct, Tom?
Yep.
All right. So for the people that are out there, hopefully we'll get some here, and we got enough people to do it. we wanted to go first back to what was your PBL question that you were starting with, and we're going to kind of share these. I like this image because problem-based learning is the concept that you have to start with a question that has relevance and meaning, something that's challenging. It cannot be a yes-no question. It needs to be something that can be argued both ways. It needs to be something that has infinite possibilities of the potential answer. True problem-based learning is a problem that you're trying to solve. So you've got to make sure that you come up with the driving questions that will guide you, that is deep enough to give you time and to give you avenues to research and find out more information. Obviously, the second part of that is then what do you need to know? So that's where you start to look at your research. What do you got to go find out? What things don't you know about this topic? Obviously, in the last 2 sessions, you had people sharing with you about the Cuyahoga River, and you had people sharing about John Brown. They gave you lots of information you probably didn't know. So you have to start to brainstorm, what don't I know about my topic? And this is going to be where the librarians can become very helpful. Librarians have tons of information, tons of databases. They know where to find information, and sometimes teachers don't. So this collaboration between the two becomes much more important as we progress. So we're going to give you a minute to put your questions in there if you wrote one. I saw some people have posted to Wiki. We're going to pull those up and take a look at them. If you didn't write one, you can write a potential one now. We'll give you a minute or two to do that and to post it in the Pear Deck. And then we'll pull those up and talk a little bit about, is this a good question to drive your research and your problem-based learning unit? So I'll be quiet for a minute or two.
Huh? Yeah.
Oh, sure. I have like 3 questions. So,
It's a great topic. Now you're a librarian, right?
Mhm.
There was a great NPR thing on that like last week.
oh, yeah?
If I can think of the name. It's a program that runs at night, like at 8 o'clock. Get my kids up and I'll sit and wait for them. And it's those 2 guys that go back and forth with the questions. While you're waiting with NPR, and type in nature and nurture and see what comes up on NPR. They've got some great experts. That would be a good resource for you to think about.
We got 5 responses. We had about one more person, I think. Wait a second and let them post, and then we'll get started. Right now, we have 9 people watching on YouTube. So those of you that are watching on YouTube, if you go back to the Weebly, that'll give you the link to the Pear Deck. And the number for the Pear Deck is listed down here in the corner. Of course, I moved my cursor, so I can't read it. The ZLQSW, and you can join in whenever you join on the YouTube. You can actually just type that code in, and it'll pick up right where we're at.
Cool. That's awesome.
This is 12 responses. It's good. There's still, according to the YouTube, 9 people out there. So I'm gonna, with at least 2 people in, 3 people here. I don't know how many are at Cleveland. We may just wait another second or two, a couple seconds, to give people another, see if anybody else responds.
Excuse me?
Yes.
This is Cleveland. 2 of us don't remember exactly what our PBLs were. Could you guide us back to where we wrote that down, please?
Sure.
Thanks.
You go, if you have a tab open still with the Weebly, that's the directions for today. Do you still have that up?
Do you still have that up? The tab for the Weebly.
I think it's lost. So I put a new Weebly.
One thing you want to do when you're working, since we're doing this remotely and there's so much going on, you probably want, as you can see at the top of mine, to keep multiple tabs open. So you might want at least 2 tabs open at this point. You want the Pear Deck tab open, which I have opened, and you probably want the penultimate page tab open. That has links to everything you're talking about. So if you put your question last week on the wiki, then the link to the wiki is right here, and you can click on your name and see what your question was.
Go ahead.
Hey, Garth, just so you know, you're not sharing your desktop, so that's not showing on the recording at all.
Oh, how did our desktop? I was sharing it before, wasn't I? Sorry about that. Were we sharing it all along or no?
No.
Oh, I apologize. Okay, so we got the tab open. If I go back one, you should probably keep 2 tabs open with the penultimate page and then your Pear Deck page, so you can go back and forth between the 2. On the penultimate page, you said it was Nancy who was asking. So if we go to the class wiki, Nancy, if your name is here, right? Nancy W.
Yeah.
Should be able to look at, and if you put your PBL, there's your question about Yellowstone Park.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And again, that gets tricky. We're going to have multiple tabs open. We'll probably end up with a couple more. You just want to make sure you do not close your Pear Deck tab. Whatever you do, don't close that. Everything else you can close. We can always go back to it. But don't close the Pear Deck. And if you're online watching, don't close your Google Hang or your YouTube, or you'll get lost where we're at. So I'll give Nancy a second here. Let's see the phone up now. So these are the questions as they came up. So I'm actually going to ask Tom to kind of talk through these with me. Maybe he can read them from that end, and then we'll talk a little bit about, is this a good question that's going to give you plenty of stuff to research and plenty of things to look at and think about?
Yeah, so Garth is referring to a conversation that Garth and I had on the phone earlier this afternoon. And what he said is, hey, Tom, have you read some of the questions, and what do you think of them? And I said, you know what? I said, I'm worried about this whole thing right now, and the reason I'm worried is because I look at this and go, okay, well, it's got to be like a really big place idea where there's a big upside, so that you have something that you can write about. We were talking about 1 or 2 that people had posted, and Garth said we referenced one that had to do with healthcare. And we talked about the idea that, wait a minute, is the idea of healthcare a place, or is that kind of something different, and is that okay? And the more that we thought about it, the more that we thought, well, wait a minute. If you are dealing with an issue, if there's a topic of significant interest that's going on in your life, and you feel like you can talk about it informationally, you can make an argument about it persuasively, and you can live inside that story or tell that story narratively, well, then it qualifies. And the fact that it's important to you is what really guides this. So what we care about, I think, from the perspective of, did you handle this assignment right, is, do you feel super passionate about something that you want to explore? Because if we can get kids passionate about meaningful, substantive ideas that they feel like they want to embrace, well, what's not right about that? By definition, that should be a good kind of topic for you to undertake. How does that sound, right? Does that sound right?
It does. And when we were talking about the healthcare issue, I said, well, that could be, place is personal. So if it's inside you, it's a place. It's there. So I think you're good to go. And I read the first question about going to Yellowstone National Park, and the first thing I thought of, and I assume that's Nancy because I just read that one.
Yeah.
But the first thing I thought of is 8 years ago, or no, it was longer than that, probably 15 years ago, I was teaching in New York City schools outside of Columbus. And we were looking for a problem-based learning to do at the end of the school year with the kids. And so we just threw out the question, where should we go on a field trip, and justify why. And we allowed kids in groups of 4 or 5 to spend 3 or 4 weeks studying the state standards and then looking at what is available that they could travel to within. We had them do budgeting, so they did all their math, they did the budgeting, they called the bus garage, they found out what it cost per mile to travel. They did all that, and then the kids publicly presented to our school board, and the winner was where we went. And so we ended up going to the Wilds down in Zanesville on a Saturday, and so in a sense, we took that concept of traveling and going somewhere and how does it what value would it bring to your educational experience, and forced them to justify these trips. They were awesome. And so that idea, I look at that as a personal one, like Yellowstone National Park. What's there to experience? Can you write an informational piece on Yellowstone? Absolutely. Could you write a persuasive piece to try to convince people to travel there? Sure you could. So what do you think?
Yeah, and Nancy, to you specifically, because I was excited that you kind of brought this up, and then we're resolving the image question that you had raised. So please know that that's still on our docket. But Yellowstone's a fantastic topic. If you go and start to explore like some of the issues that when I was there a couple years ago, they were wanting to limit the number of people that they were allowing in the park in the wintertime. Is that right or wrong? I mean, there are so many topics because Yellowstone is such a natural wonder as a park that you could get into and start to explore. And what's your take on that? That becomes extremely valuable. And I know because you said that you were, kind of there when you were a little girl. It kind of gives you this opportunity to re-engage with the feelings that were in your memory from that place. So I thought that was really cool.
And actually, we're gonna kind of move on here for a second, and there's a reason. I want to take a look at the second question. How does one's childhood shape self-esteem and confidence in adulthood? Probably there is your thesis statement. And all your other questions are questions you would find out as you're progressing through. Right, you're looking at what is self-esteem and confidence in adults, and how is that shaped. So you can look at these ideas as you go through. Growth, development, nurture, nature. I think you were actually going to start to look at that too, right?
A little bit.
That was a question you were kind of interested in. I think what I wanted to try to point out in these, you're going to see a variety of questions here, and ultimately, as a teacher, you have to allow kids to do the things that are of interest to them. Not the things that are of interest to me,
right?
Because ultimately, if you want kids to be motivated by the topic you're giving or by the research, it's back to that presentation I did where I put up the house, and there was only wood frames. We're going to provide the structure. They need to learn to write in informational text. They need to learn to write persuasively, and what's the third one? Sorry. Narrative. Okay? They need to learn to do those. So that's what we have to do. How we do it is up to each individual kid to get to that place.
Okay, so let me devil's advocate you. I've got a classroom of kids, and all they want to write about is basketball. What do? How do you beg?
Well, basketball isn't a thesis statement or a question of inquiry.
Let's say
but if they came up with some kind of, it depends. I would guide them to create a question that requires cross-curricular understanding of material. Now, I don't know offhand, you're kind of calling me off guard, but there potentially could be something where you're looking at, I guess I don't know. Maybe you start trying to encourage the kids to look at the percentage of athletes that make it into professional basketball, to give them a different view of what they're kind of thinking about or their goal might be. But those are things that when kids come up with topics, you have to think of how can you turn this topic into an essential question that has meaning in life that they're going to be able to delve into and study. And that there will be things they can find to get the information they need. So if a kid wants to write about, I look back, I had kids in 8th grade when we were doing a lot of problem-based learning in Newark, where we did this one on the field trip. We had kids looking at potential colleges they wanted to go to and writing their papers on persuasively for their parents of why this is the college that would best meet their needs. So we were beginning to try to get them to focus on broader pictures, but they were talking about, I want to be a marine biologist. Well, let's turn that into a question. And so the question became, where could I be trained best to become a marine biologist? And I remember the girl, she ended up picking South Carolina, University of South Carolina or something. But she did all the research on a variety of colleges. She looked at costs. She looked at these things. She created a budget. She then went out and studied the university, and she wrote her persuasive paper on why this was the best place for her to attend. But she was in running with the Florida school. So you can take any topic. It's not about topic. It's about the question they're asking that forces them to dig deeper into inquiry into a broader issue. Any good question, essential question somebody asks, there isn't a right answer. There's only the answers that we create based on where we are in life and what we're about. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So we can pick any topic also.
Yeah, I think ultimately, you know, that was what he and I were discussing earlier. I was reading them and I said, look, I don't know that they're place specific. Like, I'm going to do a problem on, you know, Kent, Ohio. But I said to him, if I were going to do a problem on Kent, Ohio, I would probably look at the May 4th Memorial and what impact does it have in the world around us today. I ride my bike down there a lot. I tend to stop and talk to kids, college kids. You know, I'm old now, so they sometimes talk to me. And when I stop and talk to them, I'll say, hey, you know, I'll ask them questions about May 4th. They have no idea. They know somebody got shot there, and that's about it. They don't understand any of it. And I'm like, the history of Kent, that story is an interesting story to me. Yet I'm not sure it's being told even on campus, really. So I believe, you know, my perception is I would allow my students to do problem-based learning on any topic that I could help them, guide them to a question that would lead to in-depth study of that topic.
One of the things that Garth and I, and Dr. Broadway too, have talked about again and again is the idea that a good in to get into those conversations where students or learners are really thinking about questions in depth is to engage them in this conversation about places of importance, in places of memory, because it can introduce them to the idea of how can I see something more deeply. Well, if I lived it, if I experienced it, if it's important to me, then I'm more likely to get kind of excited about it.
Well, you go back to the 3 questions about education. We talk about rigor, its relevance, and relationships. Typically, teachers in general are pretty good at relationships. They're pretty good at rigor, and they're awful at making it relevant. And that's why the kids constantly are asking, why do we have to know this? Why do we have to learn this? What is the point? So we have to find ways to bring kids' interests, kids' ideas back into the classroom to engage them in learning. Remember, we're teaching standards, and actually, more importantly, we're teaching people. And the standards are the secondary piece. So you've got to find out what makes those people tick, and then figure out how to get them to do the standards you want, but when they're in power of the content that they're learning those standards through. That's a hard task. But ultimately, if you want to reach the hard-to-reach kids, that's what you have to do. You have to find what makes them tick and bring them back into the mix. And I look at the next question. So we've got this. I think that's a great question about nature, nurture, self-esteem, confidence. A great question. I think there's a lot there. You know, I would probably focus with a broader question to start until you get into the meat of it. My potential question, and this one is pretty interesting, is a problem is occurring in my community. I live in a small town, and a small business would like to expand. Long story short, he and my township have been in a court because his position is the land he is using, is agricultural use. However, I believe the court has decided it does not qualify. Anyway, my potential question has to do with the zoning issues in Ohio townships. Pretty relevant issue with yesterday's ruling by the Ohio Supreme Court that local zoning laws have no input when it comes to fracking and what the state makes the rules. So you're on a relevant issue that is important in society as we speak today. So I think it's a great question. It's not really a question as you have it stated, but ultimately you can certainly turn that into a question. And maybe it would be as simple as, you know, do the zoning laws really protect the private citizens of Ohio? That's the question, and then you go from there. Good question. What are the potential dangers associated with ASD? Valve replacement on infants. I think this is the one we discussed, right?
Yeah.
This is the one we were discussing that I came to the conclusion that this can be certainly personal to someone and have meaning and go into. So I'm all for that. You want to comment any, Tom?
No. I think that I was thoroughly convinced with Garth's comment that, wait a minute, you need to stand down, soldier, because there's nothing that's a replacement for passion.
Right. That's a good way to say it. Okay, how can we work as a community to address the issues regarding the use of consumable products? Great question. All kinds of leeway you can go there. That's a typical, I'll be honest, that's a typical problem-based learning schools do. They do a lot with the environment, with consumer-based. They do a lot with playground equipment, and they do a lot with just the school climate. So those are questions kids get into. They're interested in things that they actually deal with every day. So that might be a real good problem for kids as well. Here's another one, ironically, about heart valve replacement. That's interesting that two people would bring that up. I guess I'm not going to read all these to you, but I'm kind of reading that one. These are interesting questions, and these are questions that scientists would be studying. So I see no problem for us to be studying them.
What a great variety.
Another great question about mental illness. They all, again, I'm not going to question your question, but you could probably just make that as simple as how can we best serve a population that has mental illness, and leave it there. And then you come into your persuasive essay and you come into it. You're looking at a specific thing about frightening, but not a problem in my mind. Now this is an interesting one, because really they're asking about fossils, which is a factual-based, informational-based thing. It doesn't really seem there's a problem there. But the second part of the question might raise a problem. I don't know anything about these fossils, so I can't respond to it. But that idea of why are they present leads me to believe that they historically shouldn't have been in this area, which would raise a rather interesting question.
Why?
Why is that? Why are they here? And again, she put down this, or he or she, I don't know. I'm not sure how interested I am in this topic. I believe it needs work. Yeah, and you need to find something you're interested in, because ultimately that's the key. You're building a question that will drive you to continue to do the research, and ultimately you're writing 3 papers on it, in a sense. You're writing that informational, that persuasive, that narrative paper on these topics. So you got to think about that. Is this something that I could easily do those 3 things? Again, that's a tricky one too when I read it. I'm like, okay, where would I go with that?
Excuse me, can I ask a question just for clarity? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we're writing 3 papers. We're going to write a narrative, an argument, and then informational, correct?
Correct.
But we're using the same topic for all 3 of those.
That is correct.
Okay, and however, will it be 3 different questions for that topic, or is it this? Are you saying we can take this like a research question and then turn it into a argument and then turn it into a narrative, or shouldn't it be 3 different questions for that topic? Or
I think you could have 3 different questions revolving around the same topic, but ultimately in a problem-based learning with students, you want one overriding topic. And so the question needs to be broad enough. That's one reason on some of those where there were multiple questions, I began to say you might just want to use the first one, these broad topics that then you can delve into as you go deeper and get to a persuasive piece, and you can get to those. So you're going to have a unit or a research topic. And you're going to have an essential question that drives your overall written work. And then you might have different questions you're arguing for or against, or you're narrating based on the original topic. Does that make sense?
Yes, better, yeah.
Is that Casey?
No,
Is
it's
that
Jamie.
Casey? Oh, hi, Jamie.
Hey.
Hey, it's Tom. Yeah. So the basically when we talk about this, okay, you have one topic.
Hmm.
Your narrative is inserting yourself in the story.
Okay.
That's kind of, the Carrari regressive. Let me take you there with this kind of fictional account, this story that I tell you.
Okay.
Right? Your informational is the exploration of the topic.
The factual-based exploration of the
Right?
topic.
And then
Right.
your persuasive is, gosh, there's a great thing that can happen within this topic that I've selected. What would that great thing be? And cite evidence that kind of gets you there, right?
Yep.
Cite evidence to support your point of view.
Okay.
Oftentimes in classrooms, what we're doing is we're taking these 3 different forms of writing and we're having kids like approach them completely different. One of the things we're looking at here is, wait a minute. Can't we center the student more on something that's of great interest to them and have them write in various forms according to that same kind of subject matter that they care about, right?
Right.
And I'll add one more piece to that. A lot of the problems with kids writing in schools, in public schools or in private schools, is they don't know enough about the topic. We superficially cover topics in school because we cover a lot, but we don't go into depth. The idea here is to still cover your standards, but you're going into great depth on one topic so that the kids truly have something to say. They have voice because there's an understanding of the material they're dealing with. Versus you come in and you write a persuasive essay on a project given to you and you have 2 days to do it. This is a much longer process for a kid where they're delving into the topic much more in detail, looking at multiple different types of resources. So it is an in-depth project is the way it becomes. Does that make sense?
Yes. Can I ask you this? Which one would you suggest that the child starts with? Is it better to start with the narrative first?
Okay, well, that's a really interesting question, and it's something that I've debated for a long time. If you pay attention to some of the readings that are in your binder, there's a section called an article from William Pinar on Carrari. And what William Pinar suggests is that if I'm going to really kind of begin to express myself in a meaningful way, the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to think back. I'm going to go into the regressive, and regressive lends itself really well to narrative storytelling.
So I was thinking, okay.
The second thing that he suggests you do is the second step of Carrari-ing, if you will, is to look at the future. And the future lends itself to persuasive writing. What can happen in the future? And then the last thing that he suggests is the analytic present, okay? And the analytic present relates really well to an informational. Now, we're taking those out of order in this course, but the idea of having, more important, we did that because we want the librarians to kind of get woven into this real quick, really kind of interacting with other, cohorts in the class. But your question's a great one. Is there a right way or wrong way? I don't know. What do you feel is the best way to work with learners? That would be something we really care a lot about. What do you think, right?
Yeah. Just thinking about it, I would think narrative information, then persuasive, but
Sure.
I could see.
Yeah. As we kind of like get to the tail end of the course, we're going to move this stuff on, hey, how can this impact what you do in the classroom? And really capture some of those ideas toward the tail end of the course. And Jamie, I would strongly encourage you, that is a fantastic topic to bring up.
Okay.
Here's a way that I could see that it would work really, really well. We don't have the right answer. We're looking for you to help us develop some right answers.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, Nancy has a question.
Yeah, shoot.
For the narrative, that's supposed to be our memory in regards to our topic, like what we remember about it, like my Yellowstone thing, my memory of the trip there. Is that what narrative's supposed to be?
Well, it could be. The narrative form is basically a different way of saying storytelling. So think of characters and plot and scene. and rising action, and then there's denouement and all those kinds of things. Narrative it can be authentic, but it can also be fictional storytelling. The way that you might interpret whether you want to do something from memory or you want to make something up, it's entirely up to you. Your creativity, your ability to kind of express and envision and develop something is really what we're.
So I could either make it all made up, or all
your
a
way.
real memory, or part memory and part made up.
Sure, absolutely.
I do it in my classroom with my kids and the content I have to teach. I do a lot of historical fiction. And so they're writing informational pieces in historical fiction manner. So they're placing themselves in the story. They are writing the stories as though they are participating in the events throughout history. So there's all kinds of ways, and I come from this as how do you do this with kids and how do you get kids to do it? And I think Tom's coming more from where are we going here. So take that with a grain of salt too. I continually refer back to kids and what kids are doing and how kids will interact with the information we're giving.
Oh, and I guess I sound like a typical student. How long is this supposed to be?
Actually, I'm going to answer this. I'm going to answer this. I have the kids typically ask me that in September, and then I never hear it again, because ultimately it becomes something very different. And I know we're already running a long time today, but you'll see some of the kids work here in a few minutes, and I never dictate how long it has to be. I encourage kids to do what they feel they need to do justice. Usually the rubric I give my students, which is a little strange, is I say you have to add value to history. That's the rubric. I think as soon as we give people rubrics, you've taken away all creativity and all insight to do beyond what is required. So if Tom hands you out a rubric for this paper, you'll do exactly.
We lost you.
Is that we need to empower the learner to go and tell their story. If that takes you 2 pages, it takes 2 pages. It takes some of my kids 5 pages, and that's what I get. And you meet kids where they're at. So we're going to kind of meet you where you're at is my take. I don't know about you.
No, and I love the way that Garth responded to the question. And Nancy, I'm taking it this was a follow-up question from you, which is a great one. One of the things that we've done is to put a time limit on it, and that's not a length limit, but it does kind of, we're asking you to think through in advance. What do I really want to say, and how do I want to say it? And when you do that, when you sit down and try to develop something within those time constraints, that is going to cause you to kind of pick and choose, which is a good thing. These aren't necessarily for big time publication or anything like that. It's more, can you develop something that really gets to the heart of communicating to somebody else what you wanted to say. So as Garth said, it's really up to you. Does it express your passion?
Okay. Well, thank you. And when you said 2 to 5 pages approximately is how they turned out, was that for each of the 3 things, or was that for all 3 things put together?
Are you talking to me as a teacher?
Pardon?
As my students, you mean? You'll see in a minute. I don't particularly, my ultimate projects don't come in as papers, and you're going to see that. They do all the written work, but that's behind the scenes. What they end up producing is some pretty unique things, and we'll get to some of it and you'll see it. So I really can't, I would say that my students are probably writing more than in most language arts students in my classroom, and that varies depending on the task at hand and depending on the interest of the student. I rarely assign, how do I phrase this? I think I'll answer that as we progress. Make sure I answer it as we progress and you see some of the kids' work first. Then I'll explain that a little better, I think. I don't know if we answered the confusion part about the question. Obviously yours is here. Your question, I think, is a great question, pretty straightforward. How does the exposure or experience of nature as a child help affect you later life or education. Lots of research, lots of persuasion you can write there, and you can tell your story. So that's a great question. Actually, that's a great question to move forward on. And then we got one about the librarian and teacher relationship. Again, I think that question you could do a lot of research and probably write from what's going on here if this works. And there was one about a little confused. I don't know if you're in one of the classrooms. I'll let Tom take this one.
Okay, all right. I'm still a bit confused about the focus of these questions, but mine was focused on dreams. My working question is, how does the location of a person influence their dreams? Additional question, should I be solving a local pertinent problem? Should I just be researching some aspect of that memory from the last session? The broadness of the question is confusing me a bit. Okay, so if you're confused, that means that you're doing this right. I'll start there. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, what we're after is we're after discovery of something that you can be passionate about, that gives you the ability to write in these three forms. So if I'm looking at your original question about this idea of dreams, it says the location of a person, or what I see in my dreams, or where I am in my dreams. We could take it that way. Or we could say where I went to sleep. Does that affect what I dream about? I could think that I could write a really fantastic, creative, fictional story about a dream sequence, right? I think that I could also write something informationally about dream research and what we know, and what dreams kind of, what that whole kind of time of your sleep has to do with other areas of your life, or what it might indicate. So I can see that. Persuasion, question for you would be, or for the writer of this would be, where can you be persuasive in this? And I don't know the answer to that. That's for you to decide. If you would want to do that, I would be eager to know, how can you be, where can you be persuasive? Are you saying that we should be more attentive to our dreams? The dreams that we have should play a bigger role in our conscious and waking life? That would be an example. I wouldn't dissuade anyone from pursuing what it is that you want to do. When you're talking about the second portion of your question, like solving local pertinent problems, or researching some aspect from memory, local pertinent problems that you can solve, those make this comparatively simple. A gorge dam being removed. Local problem to water quality. Solved. Has all these benefits. John Brown's monument being restored. Lots of benefits, lots of upside. Those would be examples of local pertinent problems. An aspect from memory, that's getting into the topic of what's important to you. So there are many different ways that you can address this, and what's beautiful about seeing these together on a screen is that all of you are approaching it in a different way. So my response back to this writer is, do you feel comfortable that you can see the question that you're posing in these three different forms of writing? And if you feel comfortable about that, I think it's totally cool.
The other one I would say is the local problem is probably where you would go with students. Right? They're probably going to go more towards what's local, what's real, what's relevant to them. So depending, again, I don't know if you're a teacher or librarian, but if you're a teacher and you're thinking long-term, what you do would be a great model to share with kids later about a pertinent local problem if you choose to do it that way. I think we've seen all of them there. Oh, this one. Actually, this is a great one. I would highly recommend whoever's doing this one to keep going. I have a lot of fun. I have some things to share with you, some resources if you're interested.
That's a go for whoever wrote that.
This one about how do school assessments impact students as learners. I think this is a great topic in the world we're in today. I just was down in Columbus presenting down there, and there were a lot of people about PARCC. And as a middle school teacher, we've lost sight of developing the whole child. And so I strongly encourage you to go forward on that. And seriously, if you want resources, contact me. I will tell you this. Here's another problem-based learning our students did at Newark, just to give you an idea. The students were really concerned about the teachers that were being hired in the district because they were provided with, and this was 12 years ago, they were provided with 4 laptops in the room, in each room in the classroom, and the teachers weren't using the computers at all. So the kids created, as part of theirs, they looked at the standards and what was going on, and they created a set of interview questions for candidates that applied for jobs at Newark City Schools. They researched those, they went in, they did what they needed to do, and 2 of those questions were ultimately put on Newark City Schools' interview list for questions that they asked. And that was a pretty interesting topic because they were ultimately going back to, this concept of what are we learning and who's being picked to do that learning. So that's an interesting question. We're going to move on because we're already after 5. So we're going to skip a couple of slides. So we'll just kind of take a look at them. We talked a little bit about that. We're going to skip this for now. We're going to move on to some informational writing. And these are examples of my students' informational writing this year. So you're seeing a very different thing than written papers all written out, although there's those. So with the time we have left, let me just quickly go over a little bit about informational writing. And we're going to skip some slides and talk a little bit about this. There is a multiple choice question for you as you're looking at this. But the first thing you have to keep in mind is informational writing is it explains something. It's the real facts. This is what it is. It's how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and describing that step by step what you have to do. That's informational writing. It has to inform others, but in the process it should also inform you. You should be learning new things about what your question is. You should find out new details. You should find out new facts. And that's the beauty of problem-based learning. The more you find out, the more questions you will come up with, and the more avenues you have to explore. I tend to, and I know you were talking about which way you go first, I tend to spend a lot of time at the beginning of my school year trying to get the kids to understand that the class is about them. So everything we do is kind of that method of self-reflection first, whatever the topic may be. What are the essential questions you have about the topic? But then I typically do informational text first. They need to write the informational piece first because they don't know anything about the content. I teach World Civ. They don't know anything about the ancient world, whatever it may be. So I tend to do a lot of informational stuff up front, which leads to a variety of unique things. Some examples, obviously newspapers are supposed to be that way, bibliographies, almanacs, etc. So the question is, do you like this type of writing? Do you have a passion for it? So we'll look at your answers. Everybody answer real quick. Do you like that kind of writing? And there were 12 before, so we'll give everybody a second here. And I'm going to show the answers. If you're still out there, you can answer. So we got yes, you love informational writing, 6 of you, that's good. And you've got 3 people who are like, no, I don't like this. That's the way most kids are. They see informational writing as a waste of their time. They just, to be honest with you, they want to do creative writing. That's what they want to write about. They want to make up stories. They want to do that. But informational writing becomes much more important as we move to the Common Core, and there's more informational reading, which a lot of people have complained about with Common Core, that we're being pulled into more informational text and less into other kinds. We got a no comment now. But ultimately, I think a lot of the people, I'm surprised 6 said they loved it. That's good. The 4 that don't, probably because they see it as boring. Do you love it?
Oh, I love it.
You do? Why do you love it? So you can.
I like the research part of it. That's why.
You like the research part, which is what I like about it as well. I like to find out new things.
Well, I think that a lot of the librarians, I'm guessing that's 7. There are a lot of librarians in that number.
And I'm guessing that the teachers are probably the no's.
Right.
Would be my guess. But we're just guessing, so let's ask a quick question. Well, no. We're just moving on. Again, a time constraint, we're down to 20 minutes, and there's a lot here, so we're going to skip a few slides. The next question was going to ask you what other types of people use this kind of writing, and obviously librarians will probably come up. If you want to respond real quick, we'll show them, but we'll only go 30 seconds for you to respond. What other types of jobs do you think use this type of writing? Is this helpful for kids to learn? And I can think of a lot. We'll see what you come up with. Think about that basketball kid, right? The sports writer, right?
Design. There's good dialogue. I would just believe. No.
We got some response. We'll just project them if you're still writing. That's great. Oh, yeah, paralegals, healthcare workers. Oh, there's a long list. Advertising, journalists, lawyers, doctors, teachers, social workers. Teachers, interesting, they tend not to like this, but this is what they're asked to do when they do data and they find out all about their students. Yep. Research many times. You know, I was thinking of the police was the first one that came to mind to me when they do accident reports, when they do those kind of things, very informational writing. So we're also teaching our kids a skill, even with the people that responded here. Professors, a lot of their papers would tend to be that. As you look at this, we're also preparing them for some jobs. So that's something to keep in mind too. Career readiness, talking to kids about you're learning something that will be helpful. I think most jobs, that's probably right. Probably at McDonald's, there's informational writing from the manager. So it really doesn't matter where you end up. You're going to have to know how to write informational writing. 12 people responded, so we're going to move on in time constraint. So here's what I'm going to take you to. There are 2 slides here that kind of show you some of my students' work. This is my digital refrigerator. This is what I consider to be some of the best work the kids have done. And so there's a link up there. I'm going to ask you to click that link. I'm not going to switch off so you can click, but you will come to a post with this image. And most of these things, like anything with a blue play, is a video. So you'll be watching a video. Anything with an image is just a picture. The circles are facts, so these are kids' written work. You might see blogs that they've done. So there's a variety of things. Some of these are just pictures of my classroom and how we run it. But I wanted to give you a second. I don't think kids find informational writing boring when you create something that makes it interesting. So if you give them the opportunity to do something interesting and something that's more along their lines, I think you'll find that they enjoy it. So I'm only going to give you, again, because of time constraints, we're already at 10 after. I'm going to 15 after. There is a box, I think, for you to write, isn't there? That I'm just going to ask a question. What did you find interesting? So you're just kind of looking. There's music videos. Kids are making music parody videos. Kind of skim around, look at a couple of things, and then watch one thing, watch 30 seconds of one thing, go see something else, and kind of see what kids are doing. And then I'll take you to our real informational text next. So if you have any questions, just yell something out from any location. We'll go from there. Do you have volume?
Yeah, but I didn't want.
I'll crank it up. We'll mute this for a second.
Athens used to have a direct democracy about 2,500 years ago.
So what have they written before they do this?
Everything that you're saying.
The informational stuff is already written, but then it creates a very unique way to present that information. This particular kid, I think, has about 3,000 views of this video, where other kids are learning from her.
Officials would come around with baskets, and citizens would use slabs of clay or coins to cast.
Okay, let's move on. I get bored. I've seen them all so many times. I'm like, okay, that's a thing. That's pretty cool. I think it opened up that thing. It was very good. So this is her information writing. Move your cursor over those images, and she's telling you what's going on here. Now this is an information.
Citing it too. Is this, so those are sites that she used?
Yeah, she's citing where she's getting that information from.
So you could go to that
The
also.
videos are built in, so she can build the YouTube videos she's watched and learned from. My favorite is go to that, put it back over. I think it's this one, but let's see. That's my favorite.
The Mongols came down the road, carrying black death with the mold. I tried to run and escape. I don't want to die. The Silk Road is for trade. Gold and silver were made. This isn't what I wanted. I don't want to die. Bodies were casual. Smells and bloodstone. Take down Google Stone.
That is our Digo, shared Digo feed, where the kids are actually sharing resources, highlighting the text and sharing it with each other. So we're creating a collaborative group. There's over 700 kids in this group that share resources daily. Now, if you scroll down, I think those are all one. I was trying to find some answers for them. But if you get, so now those are kids that don't have the pictures. So now you're seeing what the kids are sharing. And they're annotating on their own. They're highlighting and annotating, which is a park assessment.
Oh.
So we're doing park assessment without worrying about park. We're teaching the kids how to highlight, like you highlight on that. Do you do that? Do you know how to highlight on the web?
Yeah.
And save forever?
Oh, no.
Yeah, see, they do.
Oh, okay.
They're learning a skill that they can go back to this website 5 years from now, and if they've read it and highlighted and put post-it notes, it'll appear for them.
Huh.
They know how to do that.
If you can take a second, I know you probably didn't get to look at too much, but I'll put these links to these live links in the actual class feed. So if you want to look at these at some other point or see some of the kids' work, you can. But if you can write just something you saw, was it informational writing first? Hopefully you looked at a couple pieces of informational writing or salsa. We'll give you just a second or two to write something, and then we'll take a quick peek and then move on to, I think, the real informational text we've done. So if you're right, we're going to go ahead and look at some of the responses real quick. Again, I know you didn't have much time to look, and we probably won't have much time on the next one either, but at least we can get an idea. I really enjoyed the Christian Pizzeria. Now she's hungry. I don't know if any of you saw that with stop motion animation. I love the Minecraft videos, really engage the students, so they're using informational text to build worlds in Minecraft. So they have to have that informational text to know what they're building. So they're writing it all. Somebody said, where was one? Yeah, the format is the opportunity for the child to bring out their personalities and preferences. Letting kids go. Fascinating, makes it fun. Whoops.
Sorry.
No, I'm just kind of moving on me. It was all informational writing. That's what I want you to see. This is all informational writing. They wrote papers and then turned them into something they're proud of and something they can share with a broader audience. It's one thing for you to have a kid turn a paper in to you, and I as the teacher read it and grade it, and most kids are going to get that paper back, and if they got an A, they probably read the comments because they want that ego boost. If they got a D, most of them don't read the comments. And then they do one of two things with that paper. They either walk out the door and throw it in the trash on the way out, or worse yet, they put it in their binder, never to be seen again. We're changing that. We're publishing to the web, kind of like you are with the wiki, that this becomes a bigger audience. People can see, people know. Right, the government, the materials education. Okay, so we kind of get this. So we're going to move on. this is what really I think is the informational text that we're going to spend some time on. So you can click on this while I talk. This is the wiki like you're using. So we've decided, I decided 9 years ago I started with an essential question of my own. How do we engage kids with content without boring them to death? So what we decided to do was we decided that we were going to write our own textbook. And so over the last 7 years, with about 1,600 students at 2 different school districts, we have written our own textbook. All kid created. All the projects you see are kid created. Everything here is done by kids, and this is the killer. There are no grades given for anything that's here. We simply have changed the idea of what it means to educate kids in that room. It's no longer about grades and what you can do and how long your paper is. It's about what value you can add to the understanding of history. If you look at this, there is a couple things I will point out. Not too many students can say their work has been used in TED Talks, which is pretty cool. We have 2 books that are written right now about our classroom where kids have been interviewed. I'm going to click on this link for those of you on the Pear Deck. I'm going to kind of move for a minute and go to this. If you do scroll down a little bit, you're going to see a live interview where the kids were interviewed in LA. A live studio interview where my students were interviewed in LA. You'll notice that Ashton Kutcher tweeted about us, talked about this William online textbook. That's pretty unique that kids are getting that. If you kind of look through this page, I'm going to just take you to the Renaissance page. So on the Renaissance page, if you want to click on it, I want to highlight one particular video. So on the Renaissance page, everything has been written by kids over time. They edit each other's work. They continually come back and edit. But this video was done by a kid 2 years ago, and I'm going to go to the YouTube version. And if we go to YouTube, he has 97,000 views on a video he made in 7th grade, which is informational based. He shared it with a broader world. He's 12 years old when he did it. He has 188 discussion comments. He's got 2 college professors arguing whether his information is correct or not. He's 12, it doesn't matter. He had passion and he used it to create something amazing. If you look through this and start to look at this book, we have kids editing this book during the summer. We have kids coming back to write when they're not in school. I have kids in high school, a kid that emailed me as a sophomore in high school, so 3 years after he left my class. He goes, I was looking at my page and nobody's edited it and it looks awful compared to the other kids. Is there any way I can redo it? I dare ask any language arts teacher if they've ever had a kid come back 3 years later to rewrite a paper. But we're fundamentally changing the way informational text can be written as long as we can bring some tech in. If you read down through, it's 12-year-old writing. There are mistakes, there are errors, there are continual edits. There are kids following each other and building documentaries on another topic because they saw another kid. I would like to point out that all of it is Creative Commons licensed, so they are learning digital ethics in the process. My essential or my problem-based learning was how do I engage kids with content? And I've tried 7 years to figure that out. But my kids are doing it too. And so I see every day that you can take kids somewhere new if you give them powerful opportunities to be who they want to be. Is that, I don't know, am I making any sense to everybody? You're in here, you're the only person listening to me that I know I see. Is this okay?
Yes.
Am I babbling?
Got it.
So you might want to take a look at some of these other things, how kids are building, but this is like informational text. And what I would say is its highest. I will point out one more thing about the homepage that I think was well worth you taking a look at, is the video that was made for this was made by 3 kids, or 6 kids I think, the last day of school 3 years ago. So the last day of school when everybody else is out partying, they're like, we need a homepage video that explains our online textbook. So they've taken total ownership of this. And they did the video, and I was in Boston presenting this at an international conference and showed the video, and I got a lot of heat from people that are like, well, it's all choppy, it's all cut up, you know, it's not like done. And I'll skip forward a little bit so you can get a sense of what we're talking about, and then I'll. So they're splicing all these people's answers, and they're splicing them, and people were like, it's so choppy, it's all cut up. And I went back the next school year and I said to the kids, hey, we need to talk for a minute. Nobody understands what you were doing, so they added this preface. And they added to this preface at the beginning, As I said, several people were interviewed in this 10 to 15 minutes, but no one person gets a complete answer in the total introduction. And then they say, which I find very interesting that 12-year-olds would say that. The student's idea was that just like the textbook, no one person creates the answers. We simply build on each other's work and create a collaborative answer. This introduction video shows that idea by design, no less by 13-year-olds thinking outside the box. When we can get kids to become empowered, they will write unbelievable informational texts. But we've got to give them some motivation, actually not motivation, we need to inspire kids. And we inspire them by letting them pick problems that have personal meaning to them, that have some relationship to the world they live in, and then we, in some ways, I say the best teaching I do is opening the door and getting out of the way. Establish a framework and make sure they're meeting the standards. But I think what the kids do speaks for itself. Is that fair to say? Tom? Somebody? Anybody?
I think
Hello, are you out there?
I think you show that by showing us your fridge.
What?
I think you show that by showing the fridge, that they are doing these amazing pieces of informational work, and you have proof.
Right.
The thing that keeps running through my head is, if I'm a librarian and I'm sitting here listening to this, what does this mean to me as a librarian? Or if I'm a teacher sitting here and my school district doesn't have adequate funding, what does this mean to me? And the one encouragement that I have for everybody who's listening or will be is, these are ideas. The question is, how can it work? And what can you contribute from your own unique perspective that's incredibly valuable? So if you find us resistant to the idea of let us answer a question for you and tell you what it has to be, that's by design. It's not for anyone to decide. It's for you to share what you believe is a great way to approach this, and everybody's ideas are going to be different.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true. Right. I know there's a lot of schools out there that don't have any of it. You know, I do see a relationship maybe where the libraries sitting in a room with 15 computers, or maybe there's the potential that we can find ways to collaborate with some of these teachers and bring kids into the library for certain times. You know, again, all their informational text that you're seeing of my kids is all written, and then they do something with it. So they're still going through that writing process. They're still editing their work. They're still making changes. They're still continuing to research. And in the end, they have a piece that they can build off of. And maybe that's some way that there's a collaboration that teachers can find to work with librarians as we progress. We have 3 more minutes till we're supposed to go, so I'm going to fly through a few other things. Actually, I guess this is probably one of the more important slides to maybe talk about for a second. And that is, then, how do we engage kids in informational writing, you know, beyond the computer technology or whatever you may have just seen? I think what's really interesting here is, in the end, it is the question. It's the question that inspires kids to want to understand the world they live in. They want to understand why things are the way they are. So we need to make sure that our questions are complex enough to give kids depth, to be able to move in it, to be able to find their own way in that. We've got to find rich readings and materials that they can gather facts from. Well, that's where the librarians might become a big help. What databases do you have access to? What information do you have about topics that teachers don't necessarily have at the disposal of their hands?
Could inspire.
Right. What about, you know, again, we could go through all the graphic organizers and visual organizers that kids need to help organize their information. Maybe that's something else that the librarians can help with, some kind of resources, or maybe the teachers can bring to librarians with resources. Kids need graphic organizers. I didn't bring a lot to show because I typically build my graphic organizers or whatever resource I'm using based on what the kid's doing. If they're generic, they're not meeting the need I need. So you've got to look at your problem and figure out what it is you really need to brainstorm. And for some kids, that may be a series, like you go back to a couple of the questions. You had a question and then 7 more questions. Well, those questions may be your research points on a graphic organizer that guide you through as you're reading and learning. So you got to think about what it is you're trying to do. If you're going to look at the web, there are a few things I would recommend you take a look at. One is Zaption. Zaption is a YouTube software that allows you to ask guided questions through YouTube videos. So it will force kids to stop and listen and pay attention to what's being presented in YouTubes. For the librarians, that may be a great resource to be able to push videos that you want to use. It works with other things as well, but I used YouTube as the example. Where you could provide resources to schools that are actually spliced and guided through from the library. There are analytics with that, like Pear Deck, where everything is housed. So you can see the kid, you can see how long they spent on the video, you can see everything that they answered, you can have extended responses, multiple choice. It's directly built in. ThingLink is something we were going to attempt to do today, but we're probably not going to get to that. The tutorial's there, so I don't know, Tom, if you want them to try to do that on their own.
Yes, yeah, so we'll follow up with this at the start of the next session with ThingLink and bring you guys up to speed. But basically what we're going to ask you to do is to build the equivalent of Garth's refrigerator to your own image and append that to your informational writing that you do.
You know, Pear Deck obviously is what we've been using, which is a free resource which allows you to collect kids' writing. So if you have access to that, S'more is another one. You can just Google these and plop them in. Any kind of infographs, my kids build lots of infographs, which by nature are informational. Okay, and they're using pictures to explain that. There's a lot more you could be doing with that. And if you have any, yep, go ahead.
Oh, now the refrigerator that you're talking about that we're going to build, are we doing that, you want that done by next Tuesday, or we're doing it in class?
No, we'll work on it next Tuesday. The thing that we want for you to give more consideration to and come prepared with on Tuesday is your statement, your inquiry statement, and then that related kind of visualization, that picture. The reason we're asking you for the picture is it takes just a matter of minutes, but we can develop this little interactive ThingLink that's kind of like Garth's refrigerator, and you can kind of try that and see what it's all about, okay?
Okay, thank you.
I will show you very quickly on the wiki we have. On this one, I made a very quick ThingLink. Oops, sorry. I made a real quick ThingLink and did not fill it into a great deal, but they will embed directly into your wiki. So this was the picture I picked. I'm from Newark, Ohio. I've referenced it a few times today. And when you move your cursor across, there are now icons that appear. I just basically wrote some brief things so you could see what we might be doing, and then ultimately this can be embedded into your wiki. I do realize there was a problem uploading pictures, so I will have to look into that. Until today, when I logged on as somebody not me, I didn't understand what was going on. I'll try to fix that, so by next week we should be able to do that. So back to this real quick. We're going to skip that for right now. Next week, do you want to talk about this again, just to reiterate where we're going?
Sure, yeah. So if you have the opportunity, this presentation, like all of them, is available in raw video format. You can access that on the Penultimate Weebly homepage, where you go to class meetings, and you'll see a link there where you can watch any of these videos over again. I would draw your attention to this particular slide. We reviewed it in the beginning. Just to redouble what we're talking about, that next week are going to be 2 working sessions, and it's going to kind of culminate with this writing that you do. So if you can come prepared, think about the things we talked about. You can go back and watch any of this again or any of the sessions again. Get that PBL, that kind of inquiry statement the way that you want it, and select a large-sized image to go along with it. If you bring those 2 things to class, what we'll be doing is we'll kind of work our way through the tutorials that Garth's been kind enough to put up in terms of the development of your ThingLink. We're going to ask you to work in collaboration with teachers and librarians that you can get in touch with in your own individual classroom. We'll also kind of make things available so we can all kind of converse across the 3 classrooms on just a wide open Google Hangout, and we'll see what we can get to. So, but as we make our way through, this is the master task list of what we're trying to accomplish over the next 2 sessions, okay? So before we get out of here today, the one thing, and Dr. Broadway keeps prompting me to bring us up is, hey, help us understand. And I started with a question. Is it cool or is it kind of difficult to be doing something where we're just allowing people to work remotely? Do you like that or not? That could be a subject for your exit slip. Comments and suggestions, whether you have something that you think about today's class that's good, whether you're, oh gosh, if you could focus on this, it would be an improvement for me. We're always interested in knowing those things. So if you could take a moment before you log off and just go ahead and give us your exit slip for today, that would be most helpful.
And once you finish that, I guess we're done for today. Thank you. And it looks like the broadcasting is about 1.5 minutes behind where we are. So we're going to
We live in the future.
Yeah, we'll leave this Pear Deck open for about 5 to 7 minutes to get it time to catch up.
Not the last.
Hey, Tom?
Well.
Yeah, I mean,
You there?
You can always email me if you have any questions. I do have a lot of things going on, so have you ever seen Boki?
earthquakes, we don't get forest fires.
We're going to end the broadcast now,
we don't
Tom.
get a whole lot of tornadoes.
Okay, I think we're good. We were just behind on the broadcast, was actually behind a couple minutes. So I just want
Oh,
to make
that's
sure,
fine.
even in the broadcast, as long as it's at the end, if you can see it, make sure it just shows exit slip. That gave everybody plenty of time.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. We'll see you on Tuesday.
Okay. So these characters you animate, but you write the